Welcome to The Mountain Gardener with your host, Ken Lane. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and local advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your host, Ken Lane.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener. This is your host, Ken Lane, here every week talking about the landscapes of northern Arizona. And finally, it's warm. Your plants are just going to thrive at this point. Plants love to be in that 80s, low 90s, high 70s range. They love that really 80 degrees plus or minus, 2-3 degrees. They don't like to be in the 60s. It's just cold and dark and the daylights are short and the soil is cool. What will happen now is those plants, those tomatoes, the petunias, the trees, the fruits, the evergreens, the soil, as it warms up, they start to root out. They start to establish themselves in their garden space that you put them in, and they just start to flush new growth. And so for myself, I had planted some very large petunias. Purple's my thing this year. Every year I pick a color, and then I make that my theme through the containers, through the garden beds. I have purple petunias. That's my thing. They were gorgeous, and they got hit by that hail like a month ago, and they looked terrible. They were so pathetic and beat up. Well, that's okay. I'm a gardener. We can pull these things around. So I fertilized them right afterwards. And then right after that, it was just nothing but cold for the next 3 weeks. And they just sat there and they looked at me. And I thought, why aren't you forming new buds? Why aren't new flowers? You should be covered. Petunias should have far more foliage, petals than foliage. They should be covered in flowers. There'd be nothing but a carpet of purple. I don't want to see any leaves. I just want to see flowers. Well, I fertilized them again, like two more weeks later. Thought, okay, we're going to juice these things. If you guys don't turn around, I'm replacing you. We're going to go with a different colored theme. Well, I fertilized and went up to, Lisa and I went up to Lake Powell, spent a few days, and when we came back, the weather had turned around and they were just magnificent. They're just exactly what you want. And there's 6 of these things. Is that right? 6. Each one is about 3 feet around. They're magnificent, and it's just a solid thing of purple. And so it's just because the fertilizer couldn't do it because it was so cold. They were just in this hold pattern. We finally got into the 80s, and all of a sudden they went, okay, we're ready. Whoop, and they just all at once picked up that food and just went crazy. And they'll get nothing but more beautiful from this point forward. That's going to work for your geraniums as well as it works for your peppers, eggplants. They do not like cold. They want to be warm. They need the summer. They need the heat. They need to be in that 80s plus or minus. Now, they don't want to go into the 100s and 105s. You poor folks in the Kingmans and the valley areas where it gets a little bit warmer, they're going to struggle a little bit unless you can give some shade or something else. Then there's ways to modify that garden space to control the sun or control the wind, and that's called gardening. But just generally, the folks in the central highlands, the mountain regions, just to have it warmer is going to be a game changer for your yard. Here's a couple tips what I'm doing in my own garden. Now remember, my name's Ken. We're just friends. We're neighbors talking across the back fence, and here's some things that are really working, performing in my yard. One was I fertilized with Flower Power fertilizer. It's a fancy fertilizer I make just for the mountain areas. It's a water soluble. You water in your flowering plants, and it really makes a difference. It'll get them where they are literally covered in flowers, more flowers than foliage. That's what a flower should be, at least annuals. I did that for all of my container pots, especially those that were hit by that hail and cold and snow. It's just been May was miserable. June is going to be better. In fact, I think our planting season just shifted over into June instead of May. It's just going to move into June. So you're okay to plant. In fact, you're better than okay. It's warmer. It's better planting now. The other thing I did, a little insider tip, and this gets kind of really technical at this point. In fact, if you're driving, might be worth pulling over at this point. Pull out that pen and reach into the glove box. Pull out that pen and paper. If you're in the kitchen, just sit down, pull out the drawer, and pull out that pad and paper. And this is one that you probably want to write down because it's so special. You'd never heard of this before. 2 things I've done. One for my edible things, tomatoes. I grow giant pumpkins. It's just fun for me. It's just fun growing giant pumpkins. This is what I do. There's no reason to have a pumpkin out there, but they're just so big and they impress the grandkids so much. I just, wow, Bob, you can do that? I'm good. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Let me tell you how. Here's what I did. About once a month, I sprinkle calcium nitrate around the base of my plants. The secret to flavor, the secret to size of your edible plants is calcium. And calcium is very difficult to get to a plant. And so what I do myself, I'll put calcium nitrate around the base of the plant, and it's 19% available calcium. I mean, it is right now. And it will get your tomatoes sweeter and larger than you've ever had. Just by doing it a few times, about once every 4 to 6 weeks. I just sprinkle it like salt and pepper, little white flakes, and you kind of put it around there. It looks kind of like it's got a little bit of nitrogen, and it just really makes the plants take off. It'll get your pumpkins larger. It'll get better squash. Your pumpkins and squash really perform better if you give them some more calcium. Now, what the organic magazines tell you to do is give them eggshells. Well, yeah, okay. Bone meal, bone's good. And it is good. But it's not good this year. It breaks down so slowly. It won't compost in the ground fast enough. It's really going to become available next year, not this year. I found the calcium nitrate is available right now, so it makes a difference right now. Then I'll spritz those plants that I really want to up the flavor and the size, or I get blossom end rot, with Yield Booster. It's a liquid. It's actually put on the foliage. And with those 2 things, one, calcium at the base with calcium nitrate, and then Yield Booster is a liquid calcium on the foliage, you will have the best crop you've ever had. It's a game changer in the mountains of Arizona, especially when the nights have been so cool. It really makes a difference. Second, this is what I've been doing for my gardenias, Japanese maples, rhododendrons, things that they got hit by hail or they're struggling with the dryness. Certain plants just need a little extra. I spritz the leaves on those plants with Wilt Stop. So Wilt, Wilt Stop. It's a liquid. It's an organic. It's made from, I think, pine oils or something. But you spray the foliage, it becomes very shiny. It's almost like a polish. But it locks in. It's sort of like sunblock for plants. So you spray the foliage and it locks in the moisture. It doesn't allow it to dry out. So it forms more leaves. It just leaves faster. So I've got a lace-leafed Japanese maple. This thing is stunning. It is huge. It's in a big container on my back patio. And Japanese maples basically don't like dry wind or sun, especially Arizona sun. Well, that's a problem for a lace leaf. Usually a standard maple leaf is one thing, but have it lacy and cut and really fine points, this thing wants to have brown tips and struggle. I spray it with Wilt Stop, and it looks like a rock star. This thing is just glorious because I've locked in the moisture. I've prevented the wind and the sun from drying it out. Anything that seems to be stressed, I'll give it Wilt Stop. Every time I plant a new thing in the yard, I spray the foliage with Wilt Stop because it helps with transplant. So it doesn't allow it to perspire. And plants sweat like you and I do, especially when they're brand new. Sometimes they can perspire faster than their roots can actually uptake moisture. Well, the Wilt Stop locks that in and prevents that from happening. It helped keep some of the frost off of my tomatoes. I planted the normal time, Mother's Day. Then we got frost. Wilt Stop actually prevents frost damage. It'll get you a couple degrees cooler. I think it saves some of my plants. Every time I plant a new plant, I spray it with Wilt Stop. So calcium nitrate, Wilt Stop really make a difference in my yard. I think it'll also make a difference in your yard. Be right back.
You've been listening to The Mountain Gardener with Ken Lane, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join him every week for timely garden advice right for the gardens. Visit Ken where he can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Hi, Waters with the plants of the week and our gold dust rosemary.
You're guaranteed to be the only gardener in the neighborhood with this new variety rosemary in gilded edges of gold.
Striking when spilling over raised beds and pots.
Loves the heat generated against driveways and bright courtyards.
Same zesty culinary delight in a colorful twist for under $10.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love new culinary herbs, they love to shop. New to the area with your dream home on the inside, but surrounded by boring? A castle surrounded by rock is just so bland, but we can help.
At Waters, we have a team of plant experts ready to dress up and decorate even the most boring of landscapes with something fresh, new, and evergreen.
Plus, we deliver and plant for you.
Designer plants with the experts to help you beautify your new abode.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott.
You've been listening to Ken Lane, the Mountain Gardener. Green thumbs learned while working in the Family Garden Center. Now welcome back to the Mountain Gardener.
And we are back with Lisa Waters Lane in the studio. She comes each week with your garden questions, and she's fresh off the lake. Nice glow.
I don't know about fresh. I am off the lake.
We had, well, that might be the grandkids, not the grandkids on a houseboat, Lake Powell. So we just got back from a week on Lake Powell, which is a beautiful place. The water, we were there for a week, and the water rose over 4 feet.
That's crazy.
In a week. It's great. They're resetting docks.
Yeah.
Like every 4 or 5 days, they're resetting. You know, it's amazing. And the spawn is on. So
that was gross.
Yeah. So fish when they're spawning there's a little film on the water kind of in places, not everywhere, but water temperature rose by 2-3 degrees. It was 67.8 when we got there, and it was 71.8 basically when we left. So it got warm. 70s are nice.
You were swimming. I was like, too cold still.
It's not 82 degrees.
Although I did have to jump in once to rescue something. I was like, I don't want to do that again. So.
I like high 60s, 70s kind of weather. That's like the perfect water temperature. It's like really nice. Yeah. It's refreshing.
It's okay when it's 90 out, but when it's only 75 out and you jump in, it's a little different.
So anyway, it's just nice to be in the lake, going up. The kids sure enjoyed it. So
the kids love it up
jumped
there.
in a couple times.
Yeah.
So we've got garden questions this segment. So what are any good ones this week? Surprise me. Stump. Let's try to stump the.
Oh, you'll know I don't think I can stump you anymore. You're unstumpable.
That's because I'm good at bluffing.
Yeah. That's true. Well, Linda would like to know what is on her Photinias. She has a white powdery stuff all over them. She had trimmed them back earlier in the season and shaped them, but now they just look horrible.
Yeah, that's early. Actually, I'm surprised. That's a powdery mildew, and red tip Photinia is notorious for getting powdery mildew. You know, roses always get the blame for getting powdery mildew and leaf mold and that kind of stuff, but Photinia is actually more prone to that. And so a bird or bugs or something have lighted on another Photinia in the neighborhood, and they came over and set down on theirs, and the spore just kind of this bacteria just starts to spread on the leaves, and it's eating the sugars in the leaf, and so it will come and become even more of a problem. The whole plant, especially the new growth, will turn white. Thus the name powdery mildew. It looks like this white talcum powder leaf covering. And so it will actually kill that stem. It can kill the plant. It's something serious, especially this early in the season. That's got to be. It was so cool and so wet for so long. It just has become accentuated faster than normal. So normally that doesn't show up until the end of July, August, monsoon season. Well, it's like 2 months. It's like a month and a half early.
But we've had rain. But we had a rain a few days ago.
That's true. Yeah. So that's got to be the reason. What to do? You need to spray it with Revitalize. It's an organic control for leaf mold spores, black spot, powdery mildew. It's not a bug killer. It's a fungal killer. So you've got athlete's foot of the foliage, basically, and it's going to keep becoming worse and worse and worse, especially as the new growth. We're finally warm. This new growth is going to happen. It's going to keep eating the new sugars in that new growth. So spray it with Revitalize every 2 weeks until you see new growth coming out clean. That's going to be the secret. And if you haven't fertilized it this yet, I would say fertilize it with the all-purpose plant food. Encourage new growth that comes out clean. So the Revitalizes will keep that spore in check, and the fertilizer will make it push new red, tender growth. So that's going to be your secret. And then go look at everything else. Make sure you check your roses. Make sure you check your other things that can get powdery mildew. If you've had powdery mildew just in your yard in the past, it's just anyone listening in, go check, because it sounds like this is the leading edge of powdery mildew. If your neighbors have got it, so will you, more than likely. Spray it with Revitalize. If you had, here's a real secret, a real kicker. If you had mildew spotting issues last year, that plant will probably have it this year. Come in and get a bottle of Revitalize. It's very inexpensive, and use it as a preventative. Get it on there before you've got it. It's covered in white. You have much better control. And then one parting thought. She said that she had been cleaned up and shaped her Photinia already. If you've got a lot of cuttings or leaf molds or droppings down below that plant that you've had issues with before, clean that up. That's where it's actually a spore that's down, it's harbored down inside that leaf mold. And one bird pecking around looking for a worm and then jumping back up on this fresh new growth, it spreads that easy. And so if you can clean up, don't allow that area to have air to breathe, to see the sun when it's all moldy and moist, and that's where that stuff comes back at you every year. Mm-hmm. That goes for anyone that's had issues on a Photinia, on a rose, of Petunia, whatever that mold can get onto, the powdery mildew, that'll help you out and keep it from spreading throughout the yard.
So you said get out into your yard and check things, and I think that is hugely important right now. People really haven't been out in their yards much because it was cooler, but you need to go out there and check. I was walking this morning, and I walked by a neighbor's house, and he has 3 little spruce sitting out front that he planted, I think, last year. Yeah. And I was looking at him going, well, what's wrong with those things? And they were just shining like you would not believe, but they had those black aphids just right towards the top of them, right up against the trunk. And I was like, holy cow. And they probably, unless you're out there looking, you're just not going to see it. But it's good to get out there and investigate and see what's going on in the yard. It's
warm right now, too. So I would say walk there and check your irrigation. Turn the irrigation on, not, pre-dawn. That's generally the best time to water your yard, is before it gets real hot. Mm-hmm. That's what the book says, the perfect time. But then I would run it manually just while you're there. Look, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not the most efficient time to water, but it's comfortable for you to go walk through and check to see if there's a leak, if something's gone. The pack rats have eaten off the end of your emitter heads. So it's good to walk there looking for anomalies, either in the irrigation with insects or with mildew. Anything that's not normal, then come and bring a sample.
Yeah, in a baggie.
Help you. Yeah, bring it in a baggie so we don't spread it amongst all the plants here. Yeah. So we don't want to spread disease or insects, but we can ID that very easily and help you hone that in. Right, definitely. Well, Barb is trying to decide between a chase tree or a desert willow. She wants a specimen tree, small specimen tree for her front yard, and she wants to know, what would you go with? Well, those are 2 great choices, and they're similar in size. So both are summer blooming large shrubs or short trees. Mm-hmm. So your vitex or chase tree is this beautiful blue flower. We've got some here in the store. they're in full bloom. You can actually touch and feel and try them. And animals don't eat those. Antelope to deer to jackrabbits they don't eat chase tree. Nor do they eat desert willow. We've got those in bloom too. I would say the difference between those, if you're going to choose, the desert willow should be a named variety desert willow. So go with timeless beauty desert willow. Don't go with just average. It started by seed. It's this random thing. You get these weird things with these native plants. It grows wild in northern Arizona. It's a great tree. But there's different ways to grow it. The timeless beauty doesn't put the seed pod on. And so it tends to bloom longer, stronger, brighter, more often. Has a purple flower to it. Not blue, purple. I mean, it's truly purple. Timeless beauty would be a better variety than our regular desert willow. And then chase tree is a chase tree. There's only one variety. There's only one. They haven't really bred or hybridized or come up with new varieties, but it's a blue color that has spiky blue flowers all over the top of it, and it's got a little bit different texture to it. The leaf is kind of more blue instead of green. Really, that's one. Come into the nursery. They're both in bloom right now. You can take a look. They both bloom about the same time. Long bloom cycles, both drought hardy. Both animals don't eat it. They're great choices. They get up to about under 15 to 12 feet tall. They're great choices. Let your heart choose. Just go look and go, I really like this one. Plant that one. That's a great choice. Or better yet, we got a kid we got to make tuition payments for.
Buy both?
Buy one of each. Anyway, be right back. Ken and Lisa Lane and the Mountain Gardeners.
You're listening to Ken Lane, a.k.a. the Mountain Gardener. Ken can be found throughout the week in Prescott at Waters Garden Center. Listen each week as he answers timely garden questions unique to mountain gardens. Hi, Lisa here with the plants of the week and our dwarf blue plumbago.
If you can't grow blue plumbago, it's time to move to the city.
This perennial ground cover is quick to spread and puts up with a lot of abuse from dry soil to neglect.
The peacock blue flowers are held wide and very prominent against the small bronzy green foliage.
Grows in any kind of garden, all for $11.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love easy perennials, they love to shop.
Gee, my flowers just bloom too much.
Said no one, ever. Hi, this is Ken at Waters. We had a crazy winter and everyone's ready for flowers in the garden.
Waters Flower Power is made specifically for Arizona that gives flowers that extra boost to burst into bloom.
It's an energy kick in the plants.
Get ready for roses that rule, peppers that pop, and tomatoes that triumph.
More power to the flowers with Flower Power at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You've been listening to The Mountain Gardener with local expert Ken Lane. Join the conversation every week as he answers timely garden questions. Email Ken a question directly from your phone to his desktop through the web at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Now welcome back your host, Ken Lane.
I do owe an apology. I got a little bit of kickback. I wrote an article a couple weeks ago for Memorial Day. That's 2 weeks ago. It was Memorial Day trees. Which trees? I had created a list, 12 trees, one each month. And, in December, pine trees look great. In May, purple robe locust, one that has big purple flowers that kind of float down, looks like wisteria blossoms, looks best in May. So each month I created here's a tree that looks its best. This month it's golden locust. Great summer-loving tree. Just create this list. And you could plant them to celebrate or remember a loved one. And I did that under it's Memorial Day. And quite honestly, I did not mean to put down Memorial Day. I apologize to all my veterans. I did not want to take away. I also mentioned you can also plant a tree to remember a loved one for weddings, for your pets or whatever. And some folks took a little offense. I did not mean to do that. I have a active duty son. We very much are a military family. We've had loss. We've had a loved one killed in action. It was a great uncle, but still, we've had that. So we're a deep, we celebrate our veterans. I don't want to put that down. So just letting you know, I apologize. I am such a boob, just so insensitive, but I didn't mean to do that. Sometimes gardening can be a bit boring, and you're looking to share the story in a different way. And here's memorial trees, here what I came up with. So anyway, that's just, it's out there. Didn't mean to offend the few folks that shot me an email, give me a phone call, or let me have it. I can say a couple great plants that just came in this week. A new sunflower that I'm so thrilled with is called Sunbelievable Sunflower. It's a brand new sunflower. You're seeing it promoted in all the garden magazines. You're seeing a lot of you'll see it online. You'll see it it's everywhere. This actually does perform the way it says it does. It's a new sunflower. It doesn't get that huge head where you're harvesting the seed. It's actually a sterile sunflower. It won't reseed all over your yard. That's a real benefit. Some of your native wildflowers grow wild here. They have seed that come up everywhere. Well, it's good in some places. It ain't so good in others. You kind of want to control this thing. It grows about 3 feet tall by 3 feet wide by 3 feet wide. It's just a great big beautiful ball. And Sunbelievable is famous for flowering over 1,000 times in one season. It's an annual flower, so it's going to live gloriously for this year and then die in the winter. If you're down the valley or something where it doesn't frost, okay, it will keep going. But here in the mountains, it's going to freeze back and just die. But the flowers, I've never seen a sunflower bloom like Sunbelievable. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. They've kind of done a play on words, Sunbelievable. Anyway, kind of a cheesy name, but it really does perform. This is the first year we've had it here at Waters Garden Center. It's the first year you've seen it anywhere. I got to see it at the test gardens where they were really seeing how this plant performs at the farm last fall. And I went, whoa, that is pretty cool. I got to hand me some of those. It's just gorgeous. Bring it. So we've got several hundred of them coming into the garden center. They're a summer blooming plant. Sunflowers, generally they love sun. They love the summer heat. And animals don't eat sunflowers. So if you got javelina or antelope or deer or rabbits or sunflowers have this defense mechanism. It's got a very, very hairy stem to it. It's got this texture they really do not like. And the seeds are rather tough and not very tasty. So Sunbelievable, I've planted several of these myself. I've got one in a raised bed, one in a container, and they're starting to bud and starting to flower. It's a magnificent flower. The other one, red buds, have leafed out. They're finally enjoying the warmth. And there's a new red bud called Merlot. Merlot red bud. Now, we're famous for our red buds. There's some wild varieties. There's a Mexican red bud that's smaller leaf, more shrub form. There's a lot of varieties. But the Merlot variety has purple foliage. All red buds have a heart-shaped leaf. They're beautiful. They're glossy. They're glorious. They take the wind. They don't dry out because of that glossy, waxy leaf. So it makes them very drought hardy. This is one we put in parking lots and in commercial settings and surround them with asphalt, and they take that wind just fine. They're drought hardy. You water them once established, you could probably neglect them and they would still do okay, but they'll bloom and leaf out better if you water them once every week or two. They're really great plants locally. Their claim to fame is fuchsia-colored flowers in the spring, followed by heart-shaped leaves in the growing season, and then a beautiful fall color, usually gold in the fall. Red buds do really well, but take a special look at Merlot, because if you get one of those, you'll be the only one in your neighborhood that has that variety because it's so unusual. Usually they come in greens, but to have purple foliage is just stunning. Be right back.
The Mountain Gardener, your source for timely garden advice right for higher elevations. Guaranteed to make a difference in your yard this season. Hi, Waters with the plants of the week and our gold dust rosemary.
You're guaranteed to be the only gardener in the neighborhood with this new variety rosemary in gilded edges of gold.
Striking when spilling over raised beds and pots.
Loves the heat generated against driveways and bright courtyards.
The same zesty culinary delight in a colorful twist for under $10.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love new culinary herbs, they love to shop.
In a new place, it's difficult to know who to trust, how to get help at the house, and which nursery will simply do what they say they'll do.
At Waters Garden Center, we're here to help, in the landscape at least.
Our team of plant ambassadors know your neighborhood, the plants that add color, increase privacy, and add fragrance and beauty.
And we can show you exactly how to plant locally, or we have teams to do all the work for you.
We are Ken and Lisa Lane, and we guarantee our plants will live up to every promise here at Waters Garden Center. You're listening to The Mountain Gardener with local expert Ken Lane. Mountain gardening is very rewarding, with a few Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts sure to turn your thumbs even greener. Now welcome back to The Mountain Gardener.
And we are back in the studio with Lisa Waters Lane, and this segment is all about her perspective on gardening, just what she sees in the garden. So you get more. Gardening is, if you talk to 10 different gardeners and ask them an opinion, you'll get at least 12 different answers. We have these different ways to design. There's no one right way. There's no one wrong way. It's just your way. It's a personality thing. And so we wanted more personality on the radio show besides just me. We wanted Lisa in there. So she agreed. Took me like a year to get her to agree to come on, but
I still fight it all the time.
I know you do. We did get some good news just on the home front.
Yeah.
Our son is serving in South Korea for the Army. He's a physician's assistant for, Camp Casey. He takes care of Camp Casey. And all the medics that are there. He comes home in 2 weeks. Yay. This is exciting. He's been ready. On a deployment for over 9 months. So it's kind of nice to have your family home. You pray for him. He's right on the DMZ, right there where all these peace talks are going, right where anything could explode at any time. You just don't know. The guys and gals are just always on alert, training, trying to keep going. But he takes care of Camp Casey. That is the engineering group. So if you're building something or blowing it up, his guys, he takes care of those men and women in the armed forces for the Army at least. So he's based out of Fort Bliss. So you folks in the Army, you know where that is. That's El Paso. And so that's where the 1st Armored Division, those folks, all the Abram tanks, that kind of stuff, they're based down there. So we go to see him often, but we can't wait to see our boy again. We see his wife and grandkids all the time.
Which is great.
His wife and kids.
Right.
Our grandkids. But we don't get to see him.
I know. He's going to miss his daughter's first birthday by a week.
By 2 days. Yeah.
Oh, no. But
and she's almost walking. She's virtually talking.
Cute as button.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
So, the Lane kids are always smarter than everyone else. Just like, why is it your kids are always smarter than everyone else? They're all just kids. They're like sponges.
Smarter, better looking.
They absorb. It's amazing how quickly they pick things up. Oh, my goodness. So anyway, this is about you.
About me. I like it. So when we got home from the lake, I was looking at the top of our driveway into our backyard. And our perennials have finally started to blossom, started to look good because it was cold for so long. They just kind of sat there.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not sure. But boy, the Jupiter's beard had taken off. The May night salvias, all the perennials in the yard are just looking fabulous.
We love wildflowers and perennials. Many of the perennials, those are plants that come back every year. We plant a lot of those that are more on the wild side, so they naturally spread. They can become drifts through the backyard. So we've got Mexican primrose and salvias and all kinds of stuff that are just stunning, and we hardly... I take a lawnmower over them once a year in like January, and that's all we do. Fertilize them to bring the flowers out. Right. But and they're just so consistent. You know what you're going to get every single year. So you're right, they were delayed a little bit this year because of the cold.
They were. And the ones in the garden center were delayed because where we were shipping them from, growing them at, they just hadn't had the sun and the warm temperatures yet. But
if ever there's a time, there's... I can't believe the selection your crew came up with. in the garden center. It's amazing.
A tremendous perennial selection. So I went through and I looked at a few that were kind of different or just looking fabulous. So I thought I would mention some of those. Yarrow, we have in our backyard, we have the moonshine yarrow, which is that really bright yellow one. It's terrific. It stands out like no other. But I noticed we had a Desert Eve deep rose yarrow in. And it was beautiful. It's not totally red, but it borders on those red tones.
Is it redder than paprika? So paprika is kind of the red.
It's more pinky red.
Oh, gotcha.
Pinky red. But absolutely gorgeous. And it would be beautiful mixed in with that moonshine yarrow that we have. So I'm thinking we need some of that.
Has that still got that silvery foliage to it, or is it more green?
It's more green.
Green, really? So the native one has silver foliage with yellow flowers. Everyone sees that. It's everywhere. Okay, well, that's one we have because it naturalizes. And the new rose glow, is that it?
Desert Eve Deep Rose.
Deep Rose has green foliage, which would be striking unto itself. And then the flowers are more red than yellow. They're companion plants.
Yeah, they'd be beautiful together out in the yard. We have a wonderful selection of Veronica in. It's their Moody Blues selection. And Veronica is animal resistant. It gets fairly tall, almost 2 feet, I would say. Good 18 inches to 2 feet tall. Really sharp, spiky flowers on it. Not pokey, but the flowers are very spiky, so they really stand up and look wonderful out in the yard. They come in a blue, like a really dark blue, almost purplish color. They come in a light pink color and a rose color.
That one naturalizes really easily. I always think of those like with penstemon. Penstemon and Veronica kind of go together. They're same height. You got pinks, and then you get the blues. Generally, the penstemons are reds and pinks and stuff, and the blues they're just companion plants again, and they both naturalize so easy.
There's a beautiful Pikes Peak penstemon out there, so it's kind of a what's color? It's not really purple, but not really blue. What would you call that?
Lavender, violet.
I don't know. Maybe violet, but it has a white throat to it and the flowers. Really, really pretty.
Periwinkle.
Oh, there you go.
Hey.
You're so good with your color.
Actually, I'm not. I just go through the crayon box going, what blues are in the crayon box?
But there's a lot of other penstemons out there, the pink ones. There's some red. A great hummingbird attractor if you're trying to get those guys into your yard as well. Coneflower, echinacea. For years and years and years and years and years, all they had was purple.
Yeah.
Purple. Yeah. You get purple. You want purple? We got purple. Well, now they have one called Julia, which is an orangey, orange color.
Really? That's unusual.
Yeah, very unusual. They have sombrero, which is a coral color, kind of a corally orange. Tomato soup, which is red. Yeah. And a new one I hadn't seen before this year out called Delicious Candy, and it's kind of a fuchsia color.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. We like coneflowers because we attract birds, so provide this good seed source for the birds in the yard. Yeah. And they're so easy. If you deadhead them, they'll just instantly come back into reblooming. So you can keep an echinacea blooming for months.
Till fall,
it's crazy how long they'll bloom. And all those colors, they have that same 4 or 5 inch flower across. So they have this great center, big flower with a dark center. The only difference is like a rose. The flower color changes.
But really pretty. I mean, it'd be nice to have a real mix out in your yard of all the different colors.
Butterflies, I notice, love
that coneflower. It has that landing pad.
It does.
For
they just love them. So,
Rudbeckia, which is another kind of sunflower-looking plant, good wildflower, starting to bloom now. They kind of like it hot, and they'll keep going until fall as well. We have one called Little Gold Star. So it has a little bit smaller flower to it, but it has more flowers on
good.
it.
I like that.
A lot of them, like the Denver daisies and others, have those big yellow sunflower-looking flowers. But this one's cool that you're getting it covered with lots of little flowers.
I had someone shoot me a note on LinkedIn of all things. So I don't know where the people find us. But we were asking if we have Shasta daisies. Ooh. So specifically, do we have those?
Let me tell you about that.
Okay.
So we do have Shasta daisies. We have the traditional snow lady, which is the white one. But we have a really cool one called Real Sunbeam.
Oh,
guess what color
yellow?
it is?
Yellow. Yeah. There we go. I like that.
Yeah.
Yellow. Is it butter or is it bright yellow
It's
color?
kind of in between.
Okay.
I mean, it's not neon. It's not flashing at you at night, but it's not that pale yellow. Really, really pretty.
You'll just have to come in and check it out. Mm-hmm. So this is a tremendous time, probably the peak time for perennials. Mm-hmm. If you're putting these plants that come back every year, perennial and permanent, both start with P. You want to plant perennials, and we can help you guide you through the more natural ones here at Waters Garden Center. Thank you, Lisa. We'll be right back with more on The Mountain Gardener.
Look for more tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts through Ken's website. Podcast the show, read his weekly garden column, or follow him on Facebook and Instagram at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com.
New to the area with your dream home on the inside, but surrounded by boring? A castle surrounded by rock is just so bland, but we can help.
At Waters, we have a team of plant experts ready to dress up and decorate even the most boring of landscapes with something fresh, new, and evergreen.
Plus, we deliver and plant for you.
Designer plants with the experts to help you beautify your new abode.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott.
Hi, Lisa here with the plants of the week and our dwarf blue plumbago.
If you can't grow blue plumbago, it's time to move to the city.
This perennial ground cover is quick to spread and puts up with a lot of abuse, from dry soil to neglect.
The peacock blue flowers are held wide and very prominent against the small bronzy green foliage.
Grows in any kind of garden, all for $11.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love easy perennials, they love to shop.
Welcome to The Mountain Gardener with Ken Lane. Gardening in the mountains is different. Listen to Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts guaranteed to make your gardens more beautiful than ever this year. Now for better advice that works locally, welcome your host, Ken Lane.
It is always good to share a radio studio with a pretty gal who's also your wife. So Lisa shared with us the perennials you'll find at the garden center. Now, you're not going to find perennials very many places. It's kind of like great herbs. You don't find organic herbs very many places. They're harder to grow. They're basically green. They're not very inspiring. They're green things in a bucket. And so perennials are basically, they've got a bloom cycle that's a month, 2 months. Then they're just green blobs in a bucket. They're tremendous and they keep coming back every year and they do the same thing over and over. But your big box stores, they don't want to carry green things in a bucket. They don't want you to smell it and touch it and really know how to use herbs medicinally or culinary, or have guest chefs come in and do a class on how to use these fresh herbs from the garden. They're not going to do that. But a garden center will. And so we do that all the time. So here at Waters Garden Center, we've got a huge selection of organic, fresh herbs. We've got the largest selection of perennials. The reason they don't like perennials, box stores, mass merchants, is the price is higher. You can't price point this. You can't grow enough of them to get the price down, because you've got to carry a perennial for 2 years before it becomes old enough to bloom and really show off. They're selling impulse items, the top 5, top 10 annuals, basically. They grow really fast. They can have turns in their growers' greenhouses where they're going to get 10 crops a year out of this thing. Well, perennials, you might get a half a turn, a half of a crop. You've got to hold this thing 2 years. Sometimes I've got peonies that are 5 years old. The peony has been at the farm for 5 years. A mass merchant doesn't want to touch that, but a garden center can. And so I think that really plays out, especially for your more native type of perennials. They're so specialized and they only grow in the Southwest. They need to be 3 years old, 2 to 3 years old, and they're really specialized, only available in the Southwest. Well, no mart or merchant mass person wants to touch that. It's too specialized. They want their buyer in Atlanta to hit a computer that says, order 100 of these for every one of my stores in the country, get it from this grower. they don't want to specialize and it's just too complicated for them. But your local garden center in your town, they can, and they do. And so one type of perennial I think really doesn't get played up enough is the ornamental grasses. We're up in the mountains. We're natural prairies. There's a wind that always blows. There's always motion. What grasses do for you is they add a lot of excitement, some drama, some style to your landscape. And there's so many varieties of perennial grasses. They come back every year. They just get more and more glorious. And of course, the number one seller, is Pampas grass. Now, for me, now remember, my name's Ken. We're just friends, and we're talking over the fence. We're neighbors, just kind of chatting. I would never introduce a Pampas grass into my backyard. It's too much maintenance, too much work. They're very tough, very hardy, but it's a huge grass. It grows 6, 8, 10, 12 feet tall with huge plumes. They are magnificent, but they're a lot of work. You got to cut these things back, and they've got razor sharp, leaves, blades on them, where I look like I've been in a cat fight after I've cut this thing back. For myself, I would rather plant the smaller ornamental grasses that are more native, more natural for the mountains of Arizona. Pampas grass is not natural to Arizona, but deer grass is, but miscanthus grass is, bear grass is a native. There's so many yuccas that sort of have this grassy look with this beautiful white to red to pink, yellow flowers. They're very natural here, and they naturalize very easily. And they're super easy to maintain. Bear grass, for all you folks that up in that valley area from Dewey to Prescott Valley to Paulden to Chino Valley, you've got these wonderful examples of native bear grass, B-E-A-R, bear, like bears, deers and bears, bear grass. It's an evergreen grass. Has white plumes on it, grows about hip high. You get it established, you never have to water it or care for it. All I do is I'll cut back the white flower in the winter sometime and just take the stem off, and that's all I do. The rest of it, it's going by itself. Just so easy to maintain. My absolute favorite, if you want a really showy grass, just a stunning, it starts blooming early and it keeps those blooms virtually the entire year. Carl Forester grass. It was perennial of the year several years ago. This is a hip-high grass. Maybe that's a little optimistic. Call it 3 feet. And then it's got this straight-up columnar green, rich, green foliage. And then the plumes hover above that about 6 to 8 inches. And it starts blooming really early, like April it starts blooming, right through the end of the year. Looks fabulous in containers, raised beds, up and down it's hardy enough to be right by the driveway. Super great perennial grass, and that it just is so striking. That, and I actually plant several extras just for my dogs. If you have pets, cats, dogs, especially puppies, they love to gnaw on fresh grass. It's almost, Carl Forester grass is almost like catmint for dogs. They just love the taste and chew, and they'll go eat dinner and then come down and want to chew on a little grass. So I plant several of them just for my pets, but they just look really good. I put them on the drip system that is controlling my trees and shrubs. And so it is once a week to twice a week watering. It's got such a deep root structure, so fibrous, that it just adapts really, really well. So you don't have to treat it like a flower by any means. It is not a lawn. You aren't going to mow this thing ever. You're going to cut it back maybe in January, February with some head shears, fertilize it with the all-purpose food, and it comes back, and it does this thing over and over and over again, and it just looks really good. So it's one of my favorites. It's not the only. There's a lot of choices. We've got some zebra grass. It's about like Coral Forester, when it's got a stripe in it. It's very interesting. So on the other side of the yard, I've got that. I've got several different grasses in my landscape because I love how they look naturally in the design of my landscape. And they're super easy to maintain and low water care. Everyone wants to go with Pampas grass, this monstrosity that, children Small dogs have been lost in Pampas grass. They're just too big, and they're difficult to cut back. They are magnificent. If you've got, for commercial settings, wow, they're a showstopper. Oh, a big home. They could be really stunning because they need some larger structures to really make them look in proportion. I think that's the same way with deodar cedar, Arizona cypress. These are huge evergreens used to screen plants. They grow fast. We just had some incredible Arizona cypress show up. This is a 20-foot by 12-foot wide beast. You don't want to put that right in front of your yard, right by the front door. It'll obliterate all the views, it's great at screening, great at cutting down the wind, but it's too big for most small lots. You usually will place those in the corners, or I've just helped someone with a friend put it up. They've got a busy street. They wanted them to block the traffic, the lights shining into their yard. They wanted that. I'm going, yeah, that's perfect for that. There's a place for it, but not right by the foundation, right by the house, right by a deodar cedar. This is like an 80-foot by 25-foot giant evergreen, the fastest growing evergreen. It's way too huge for most homes. They're made for commercial settings or very large yards, and you put them out away from the house, out there as accent pieces. There's places for it. And that's one I would encourage you, take a picture, bring a cell phone, an iPad, just and we can help you design and get the right plants in the right place. We got the teams that'll help you plant them. We can come out and get them installed for you, just in a really large planting of trees and shrubs and aspens, and it's magnificent. It's a privacy screen. It's beautiful, and they're so pleased. It took us a day to install it. Wasn't that big a deal. So we got the jackhammers and the digging bars and all the stuff to really make it go, and then we can extend the drip system and stuff. But take advantage of it. If you need help designing or planning or installing or delivering, your garden centers probably have that available for you.
You're listening to local garden expert Ken Lane, the owner of Waters Garden Center. He can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center, located in Prescott at 1815 Iron Springs Road. Thanks for tuning in to The Mountain Gardener. Hi, Waters with the plants of the week and our gold dust rosemary.
You're guaranteed to be the only gardener in the neighborhood with this new variety rosemary in gilded edges of gold.
Striking when spilling over raised beds and pots.
Loves the heat generated against driveways and bright courtyards.
The same zesty culinary delight in a colorful twist for under $10.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love new culinary herbs, they love to shop.
Hi, Lisa here with the plants of the week and our dwarf blue plumbago.
If you can't grow blue plumbago, it's time to move to the city.
This perennial ground cover is quick to spread and puts up with a lot of abuse, from dry soil to neglect.
The peacock blue flowers are held wide and very prominent against the small bronzy green foliage.
Grows in any kind of garden, all for $11.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love easy perennials, they love to shop.
You've tuned in to The Mountain Gardener with local garden expert Ken Lane. Join him each week as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lane.
This is a very exciting time of year for us here at Waters Garden Center. It's been a little terrifying. May was if you've got $500,000 of trees and shrubs. I mean, we've got close to 1,000 trees sitting out there. I mean, I've got 2 greenhouses packed with vegetables and herbs and annual flowers and perennials. And I've got 1,000 roses all in bloom sitting out there. And the month of May, when you've got hail coming and there's some snow and it could frost, and you just go, oh, it may not kill the roses, but it'll take the flowers. So now they're just a big green shrub instead of a beautiful, inspiring color blooming thing. So you kind of want we want things to be inspiring. We bring in perennials that are in bloom. We bring in more mature perennials so that they will bloom for you year one, not waiting to bloom. We bring in bigger trees, or fruit trees, that are of fruiting age. Most fruit trees have to be 5 to 7 years old before they're even consider setting a fruit. Well, we purposely bring in that larger, older, more mature, because our customers that shop, at least here at Waters Garden Center, they don't want to wait. They want fruit this year. And so we've got this garden center packed, and it was terrifying. A couple storms. You're going, oh my gosh, I wonder if the plants, they'll live, but it might be a month and a half before we fertilize and shape them and get them back to looking perfect. So, but we didn't have any of that. It was great. We got through it. Numbers are up and customers are happy, and it's been a good ride. Well, I think much of that season is pushed into June. So as long as we stay under 100, under 95, your plants are going to root out really fast. One thing to watch right now is go walk and test your irrigation. We went from 60-degree weather to 80-degree weather, which is perfect for gardening, but you haven't had to really water anything until now. This is the first week it's really had a good week of warmth. So your plants will be actively growing, and so they'll be actively using more moisture. This is when the flaws in your irrigation will show up. So just turn it on and walk it and test it. Make sure the javelina haven't dug up your main lines, or the pack rats dug out, eaten off the ends of your drip emitters, the gophers chewed through stuff. Just go test it. You turn it on and walk the yard, and you'll know quickly what's going on. This is also the month when perennials show up in force. Not just a few. This is the best. June is perennial month. This is a time when you want to touch and feel and taste, and the new varieties, the new specimens, things you've never seen before. June is when they show up. This is the time to buy, the month to buy perennial flowering plants. Second, the classes start back up. So we've got an entire series of garden classes that power up next weekend. And so we start out with gardening for newcomers. This will be the 14th of June. That's a Friday from 3:30 to 4:30. It's gardening for newcomers. It's always packed. Come early, bring your own chair. Friday afternoon at 3:30. Saturday, June 22nd, will be Blooms That Impress. We're going over all the summer blooming perennials and shrubs. Here are the best varieties for here. If you're thinking about adding to your landscape, come to that Saturday garden class. That'll be at 9:30 to 10:30. Then animal resistive plants. If the animals are bugging you, this will be June 28th. This will be a Friday from 3:30 to 4:30. Free. They're always free. Here we're going over the plants that the animals are not going to bother you with. All of those classes are available at watersgardencenter.com. The very front of the website, there's a huge button that says classes. The entire schedule is right there. Facebook, go to Waters Garden Center and look for the events tab. You Facebookers, you know where to look. Or you can obviously come and visit us throughout the week here at Waters Garden Center. Lisa and I love talking to fans of the show, and we'll give you a free list of the class schedule. Until next week, Lisa and I will be helping locals with perennial flowers here at Waters Garden Center.
In a new place, it's difficult to know who to trust, how to get help at the house, and which nursery will simply do what they say they'll do.
At Waters Garden Center, we're here to help, in the landscape at least.
Our team of plant ambassadors know your neighborhood, the plants that add color, increase privacy, and add fragrance and beauty.
And we can show you exactly how to plant locally, or we have teams to do all the work for you.
We are Ken and Lisa Lane, and we guarantee our plants will live up to every promise here at Waters Garden Center.
If you want a more fruitful garden, increased success in your landscape that just feels better, then tune in every week to The Mountain Gardener. Years of tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts are guaranteed to make your gardens nicer than ever. Listen to this podcast or read Ken's weekly garden column by visiting watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Thanks for tuning in.